I would like for you to use your imagination here with me for a minute. Imagine, if you will, an old man, say 79 years old. Now, we can all agree that 79 years old is old, especially when you consider the fact that the average life expectancy for an American male in the year 2025 is 75.8 years. So a 79-year-old man would already be a few years beyond the average life expectancy. So that's old. Now imagine if that old man, and this is purely hypothetical. That's why we're using our imaginations. Now imagine this man has lived a horrible life, and now he's nearing the end of it. But throughout his life, he has lived a really horrible life. Now, he himself has done very well by the standards, by financial standards and the standards of a career success that most people measure these things by. I mean, this is a man who has been given everything. He has been handed everything in his life on a silver platter, beginning with hundreds of millions of dollars being just given to him by his father. This is a man who's never had to work a day in his life, and he has lived, a life of luxury. But personally, he has been a horrible example of a human being. Just a really horrible person. Imagine that he is, throughout his life, a liar. A pathological, habitual liar. He's lied to everyone about virtually everything throughout his life. Lies that have been incredibly destructive, that have hurt people. Imagine that this man cheats people at every turn. Imagine that he is a businessman. Businesses having been gifted to him from his father with those hundreds of millions of dollars. But in his life as a businessman, he has lied and he has cheated and he has defrauded people and hurt people very badly in their lives. Imagine even that this man was found liable for engaging in business fraud to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. This is the kind of guy who, when he would do business with people, he would cheat them out of money. He would, for example, imagine that he's in the real estate business and construction business. He would hire contractors to do construction work for him of various kinds. He would agree on a price. They'd have a contract. Those people would do the work for him. Sometimes it would take months or years to complete the work at great expense to these companies. Lots of man hours, big contracts. And at the end of it, after the work had been completed, he would tell these people and these companies, I'm not paying you. I'm certainly not going to pay you what I promised to pay you. Instead, I will pay you this tiny fraction of what we agreed on. And if you don't like it, you can sue me. But guess what? I'm rich. You're not. I can hire the best lawyers in the world. I'll have you tied up in court for years. You won't get a dime at the end of it. In fact, you'll lose money because you'll spend more on attorney's fees than you'll ever collect from me. So we can either go down that road, or you can accept this tiny fraction as payment and settlement for the work. And they did it because they had no choice. So they would agree to accept the tiny fraction. They would agree to bend over and take it, because he's in a position of power and they're not. But this is the kind of guy he is. Truly a piece of shit. Now, imagine that in addition to ripping people off and defrauding them, he bullies people. He harasses people. He tries to destroy people's lives. Anyone he doesn't like, he uses his power and his money to destroy them. Imagine also that he treats the people in his life like absolute shit, like his wives. And yes, I said plural. Imagine this man has had multiple wives, treated them all like shit, cheated on every damn one. Imagine also that this man sexually abused women, raped them. Imagine that he was even found liable for sexual abuse and ordered to pay millions of dollars. And even after having sexually abused the woman who sued him successfully, he defamed her as a very rich and powerful and famous person. Defamed her very publicly. Real piece of shit. Imagine that his best friend for an extended period of time was one of the worst sexual predators in modern American history. That he engaged in sex trafficking of children. And that this person that we're talking about here was best friends with him. And it's even been alleged was involved in abusing underage girls. In fact, one of these underage girls even sued him. That was later dismissed because she was harassed and bullied and intimidated and scared into dropping her lawsuit. But this is the kind of guy we're dealing with. Real scum of the earth. Now, imagine that this man went on to a career in politics and became president. Now imagine as president, he continued hurting people, especially the neediest people in society. Cutting their health insurance, kicking families and children off health insurance, cutting food assistance programs, all in order to give massive tax cuts to billionaires. This is a real scumbag. Imagine that he indiscriminately fired people from the government, ruined their lives, people who, made their careers as civil servants for the government, losing their retirement, losing their benefits, just summarily fired. Imagine that he indiscriminately cut programs, again, to save money, to give massive tax cuts to his billionaire friends. Humanitarian relief programs, like, for example, USAID. And cutting those programs directly resulted in the lives of untold numbers of people around the world, poor people, who desperately needed that assistance. He cut it. He didn't care. Now, imagine further that this scumbag lost re-election and then lied about it and then engineered a criminal conspiracy to stay in office illegally and overturn the results of an election. And in furtherance of that criminal conspiracy to overturn the results of an election, he incited a violent insurrection against his own government. Can you imagine such a thing? And in that insurrection, police officers who he pretends to support were beaten nearly to death. One police officer died shortly thereafter. One of his own supporters who attacked the Capitol died as well. Died when she was shot by a cop defending himself and defending the Capitol. So this man is a real scumbucket. Imagine if that person was then amazingly reelected, because people are morons. And then one of the first things he did after being reelected was to pardon all of those violent insurrectionists, including those who beat police officers with flagpoles and so forth. Now, imagine, so you get the flavor. This hypothetical person is really one of the worst people you could possibly even conjure up. I mean, we have to imagine this person, because if you tried to pretend that such a person really existed, no one would believe you. If you wrote a screenplay and you were trying to pitch it in Hollywood and one of your characters was this awful a human being, they would reject the script because it's just too unbelievable. Nobody would believe that a person that horrible could actually exist. I know the movie is fiction, but nobody's going to buy that. That's how horrible a person we're talking about. That's why it's fictitious, right? Anyway, so imagine that person, this old man, is now nearing the end of his life and for whatever reason starts to think about what might come after death, if anything. Is there anything after death? And if there is, what does that mean for me? What would that sound like? Could it maybe sound something like this?
If I can save 7,000 people a week from being killed, I think that's I want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. But if I can get to heaven, this will be one of the reasons. Well, I think I saved a lot of lives.
So there, of course, we have Donald Trump, the convicted felon, insurrectionist, adjudicated sexual abuser, criminal piece of shit, calling into Fox News, talking about his attempt to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. And unprompted, he talks about his motivation being that he wants to get into heaven. Right? So I'm sure most of you have seen this. Let's talk about this, shall we? So what he said exactly was, quote, "I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole." Now, this is what I want to talk about. What does he mean by that? First of all, when he says, "I'm hearing," who's he hearing this from? I mean, we don't know. And of course, this was Fox News, so there was no follow-up question. So we don't know who's telling him things. And when he says, "I'm hearing I'm not doing well," what does the not doing well refer to exactly? The way I see it, it could mean two different things, potentially. One, it could mean I'm not doing well in terms of my personal behavior and the potential for me to get into heaven based on the things I've done in my life. Right? So he's not doing well from that standpoint. And I think that's the way most people have taken it. I think that just based on what he said, that makes the most sense, because then he talks about, I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. I mean, in relation to who? Who's he comparing himself to, on this totem pole? I mean, just based on the words, it makes most sense that he's referring to his own personal behavior, right? But the problem is, this is a man who has a very poor grasp of the English language. And so you can't just take his words to mean what it sounds like they mean, because he just might be such a fucking idiot. He's not explaining himself well. What it also could mean is that he's not doing well in terms of his health, right? Maybe he means both, but seems to me it's one of those two things. Now, my problem with the idea that he's referring to his own horrible personal behavior is that he says, "I'm hearing." Well, who are you hearing that from? Is anyone going to does he have anyone in his life or in his orbit who would tell him that he's not doing well in terms of his personal behavior? Is someone going to tell him, "Hey, Mr. President, you really are a piece of shit. Just saying. All due respect and all, sir. But, you're getting towards the end of your life, and I'm just looking out for your soul, and you're really not doing well. When I look back, all the sexual abuse and the lying and the cheating and the stealing and the fraud and all of that shit and the insurrection, all of that stuff, the way you've treated people, you're really not doing too well. And if you compare you to other people, you're really kind of down low on the totem pole." Does he have anyone who's going to say anything like that to him? No. No one would offer any critical commentary on his behavior. There's no one who would say that to him. However, are there people in his life who would tell him, "You're not doing well in terms of your health"? Yes. If no one else, his doctors would tell him the truth about his health. So if he really is hearing that he's not doing well, hard to believe that it would be he's hearing from people that he's not doing well in terms of his personal behavior, but much easier to believe that he's hearing that he's not doing well in terms of his health. Now, it could be that he's not hearing this at all. This is just, what he's thinking. Because he does this all the time. People are saying, for example, when he's always bringing up, running for a third term, have you seen his stupid little gift shop there at the White House with his Trump 2028 hats? Like, anytime a world leader comes to the White House, it's like before they exit, they go through the little cheap Trump gift shop and he shows them the hat. "Hey, see this Trump 2028 hat? A lot People really want me to run again. Who people? I mean, I'm sure that he's got the cult wanting him to run again, but he does this all the time. People say, I'm hearing. Most of the time it's bullshit. So it could be that he's not hearing anything from anyone. He's just worried about this himself. And he may be worried about his own personal behavior because he knows he's a criminal. He knows he's done what he's done to people. Lots of very horrible things that he's done to people. He also would know that he's in poor health, right? So, okay, so we have that. We also know that, I dropped my paper. I think the most likely thing about his health is that it's very poor. I mean, we know that he's overweight. We know that he has a bad diet. I mean, he loves eating McDonald's, we know. He probably eats horrible food all the time. He doesn't get much sleep, we know that, with his late night Twitter rants and his early morning Twitter rants. So we know he doesn't sleep much. He drinks tons of Diet Coke. I don't think the man gets hydration from anything but Diet Coke. I mean, very honestly. I was watching a clip from a podcast. I can't remember which podcast it was. One of these bro podcasts. And there was this, I believe he's a professional golfer or a former professional golfer. This fat slob of a man. Got a beard, white beard. I don't follow golf, so I think maybe his name is Daly. I honestly don't know. And if I'm getting this wrong, my apologies. Anyway, just a fat slob of a guy. But he's buddy with Trump. And he was going on talking about how he himself, the fat slob, talking about how he personally doesn't ever drink water. And he drinks tons of Diet Coke. Like 20 or more every single day. But then he goes on to say, and Trump drinks a ton more Diet Coke than I do. And I drink 20 plus a day. Trump drinks even way more. So we know that Trump is just drinking gallons of Diet Coke, not sleeping, poor diet, overweight, not healthy. On top of that, we see the other things, like his cankles, which he has had now for months, in which they've had to come out and address. They don't tell us shit about his health, or they lie about it constantly. Like, we don't know about that ear situation, right, from Pennsylvania, where he was, there was an assassination attempt, right? Anyway, so we don't even get medical records about that when he's supposedly shot by a high-powered rifle. But they were a force there to address the cankle issue. And so they came out and said it was, I don't remember, chronic venous something or other. And they downplayed it and said it wasn't serious. But he's had cankles for an extended period of time. There was just images from when he was meeting with Putin, his master there in Russia. He still had the cankles. So, swollen ankles could be symptomatic of much more serious conditions like congestive heart failure. Now, is that what he has going on? I don't know, because they lie to us. But I don't think he's healthy. And what if he's not? And what if he's really been told that you probably don't have all that long to live? That would explain his comments there on Fox News. But here's his problem. The way he's lived his life. Now he's concerned about getting into heaven. Now, whatever your personal beliefs on heaven or religion and God, what I'm going to say here, you believe whatever you want. I'm going to talk about this because Trump pretends to believe in God. I don't think he does. There's no evidence that he's ever believed in God or ever been religious. But I think all of a sudden, now that he's nearing the end, I think he's worried that there may be a God. And he's worried. Because if there is, he's fucked. Right? So, he's trying to buy his way into heaven, essentially. He wants to solve the war between Russia and Ukraine. Of course, he needs to do it in such a way as it gives Putin everything he wants. But he's also lying about all these other wars that he says he he solved, which he didn't. They're all lies. He said he solved the conflict between India and Pakistan. Complete lie. I was going to play a clip, I'm already getting too long, of Indian press playing clips of Donald Trump lying about solving that war and then calling him out for his lies. By the way, it's amazing. You know, you'll see the press around the world telling the truth about Donald Trump, where our own press doesn't call him out on anything. The press in India just flat out said Trump was lying when he says he solved the war between Pakistan and India. Will our press ever call him out for his lies about that or anything else? No, they don't, right? Our press has First Amendment fucking protections, and they still don't tell the truth about this guy. Anyway, so he's lying about that. Here's the problem. You can't lie your way into heaven, all right? God knows if you're lying. And again, if you believe in God, don't believe in God, fine. But again, Trump is pretending to, or at least now worried about whether or not there is a God. And if there is, you can't lie to God. He knows you're lying about this. You can't talk your way in. And by the way, Trump professes to be a Christian. You know, that's what he tells the cult. If you're a Christian, you understand that the only way to get into heaven is to accept Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, right? That's the only way to get in. Funny, I never hear him talking about Jesus, though. Even when he mentions God as a throwaway line in a speech or whatever, he never talks about Jesus as a Christian. Strange, don't you think? The guy doesn't know anything about Christianity, which is why he doesn't know how to talk Christianity. And this is why he still doesn't get it, right? He thinks that he can try to cram in some arguably good deeds or take credit for things that he didn't even do, and that might be able to get him into heaven. You know, hey, God, forget about all the sexual abuse and the fraud and the cheating and the adultery. Just forget about all of that stuff because I solved the war between India and Pakistan. You think that's going to work? Apparently he does. Oh, and beyond that, beyond all the things I said about how horrible this man is, or, you know, the fictitious person we talked about. All right, I'm going to tell you the truth. I was talking about Trump. When I wanted you to imagine an old man who did all that stuff, I was actually talking about Trump. Anyway, what else would be a problem for Donald Trump getting into heaven? You know, he basically has encouraged the worship of himself as a god. Hasn't he? I mean, he's gotten damn near close to blasphemy if he hasn't outright engaged in blasphemy. Beyond that, he said openly he doesn't even need God. He was asked if he has ever asked for God's forgiveness for anything. And he said, no, I don't need to ask God's forgiveness for anything. Again, that's a Christian? No, that's not a Christian. That's a guy pretending to be a Christian to get votes from, let's face it, phony Christians. They don't walk the talk either. Okay, what else here? And even now, with this talk about, oh, I'm trying to solve the war, stop killing so that I can get into heaven. Even now, he's proving that he doesn't really give a shit about anyone. He's not trying to stop this war because he cares about anybody. He's trying to stop the war so that he could get into heaven. He's even still using these people for himself. What a scumbag. Anyway, one final thing about this. Look, I don't know what his health situation is. I don't know exactly what he's talking about here. I don't know if doctors have told him that he probably doesn't have much longer on this planet, maybe a few years. I don't know what they've said to him. No idea. Maybe he lives another 20 years. Maybe he's gone in short order. I don't know. But here's what me personally, I think death is too good for him. Like a death soon is too good for him. I still want to see this piece of shit get justice in the criminal justice system. I know, probably won't happen, but it can. And I'm not giving up on it as long as it's a possibility. I think there is a real possibility that he could one day be indicted again and put on trial for his crimes. I want that man in this life, and maybe it'll never happen, but I want this man in this life to have justice visited upon him to some degree. He will never be prosecuted for most of the crimes he's committed throughout his life, but there are still crimes he can be prosecuted for. Crimes he's committing right now for which he has no immunity under that ridiculous Supreme Court decision. And I want him to have justice visited upon him in this life, not just in the next. So I don't want him to escape this life without getting that justice. So anyway, that's just my thought on it. But if there is a God, whether you believe in one or not, and if there is a heaven, Donald Trump is fucked.